Financial Planning 101.
It's Brian Preston, the Money Guy.
Brian, I am super excited about today's show because this allows us to do a little bit of flexing. One of the things that we have to do when we go to financial planner school, right? When you become a financial advisor, when you study for the exams, is you have to learn about some basics of financial planning, right? We learned it in the context of the financial planning pyramid, right? Like how the different parts of financial planning stack on one another. Well, as you and I were talking, we said, it's sort of different how you approach the pyramid and the basics and the thought process around each of those subject matters at each age and stage. So why don't we kind of run through what we dubbed Financial Planning 101 at each age and stage and range of life?
By the way, I don't know why when you said financial planning school, I had visions of the North Pole with Tim Allen as the Santa Claus, and we're running around. Maybe it was a Buddy the Elf moment with Tim Allen. I've like brought every Christmas movie out there together for its own mashup. I think that what I like about this show is that there's so much of financial Twitter, because that's the spaces I'm hanging out, where they will give really good, simple information, like spend less than you make, control debt, automate your investments. Every bit of that is foundational knowledge. But I think we're financial mutants. We need to go beyond that. And that's what I like, is that how do we go beyond basic? How do we get you guys with the right mutant mindset to really take it to the next level?
Yep, love it.
So let's jump right in. Let's go into the 20s. I mean, I want to talk about building that base up. There's a lot going on in this decade because you've got to build the foundational knowledge. I know when I graduated college, that's when I discovered that Millionaire Next Door book, The Wealthy Barber, and it just lit a fire in my brain on starting to save. But there is so much. I worry about anybody who's in their 20s now, is because it is also the greatest time to be alive, to be an investor, to be a saver, but it's also the scariest in the fact that there's just so much information.
That's right.
How do you kind of curate it and bring it back? And there's also some emotional stuff.
That's what I was saying. Not only is there this like vat of information available. I know when I hear this all the time from young folks or folks that are just graduating. I didn't learn personal finance. I didn't have that class in college. Didn't have that class in school. So there's tons of information, tons of knowledge to be had, but there are so many distractions for those in the 20s. This is our first, I guess college was our first like taste of freedom, but this is our first like taste of like real adulthood. And there's a lot of things that can like get us off track and send us in different directions. So we think if you have some of this foundational knowledge built, it can help keep you in line.
So let's talk about this. How do we do it? And I want you, if you're a 20-something, how do you automate this process? Let's make it automatic for the people. Let's talk about the financial planning pyramid.
So if we think about this pyramid and sort of the base that we have to think through, number one is cash flow, right? Yep. Money coming in, money going out. And so when it comes to things to think about in your 20s, number one is obviously very basic. Spend less than you make. Learn how to live on less than the income that you have coming in. If you can just figure out that one thing, we call it deferred gratification. If you just figure out that one thing, you're already going to put yourself worlds ahead of your peers.
Yeah, and think about it in terms of a lot of people, I think they just wait to see what's left over at the end of the month.
Yep.
No, you need to be very proactive in your cash flow planning to where you're actually paying yourself first. That's back to that automatic wealth creation by going ahead and creating a system, dollar cost average every month, have money going into your investments so that you don't let this just whatever's left over is what I invest. That's not going to work.
Number two, and you hear us preach this one all the time, understand the dangers of debt. Now, we are not here at the Money Guy Show anti-debt or against all debt, but we do recognize that it is a tool that can be incredibly useful in your financial toolbox, but it can also be incredibly dangerous. And I worry that a lot of folks in their 20s use it carelessly and use it haphazardly.
Well, but I want to be careful because, you look at UGA football. There's a danger of some of the coaches when you look back through the history. They were known as players coaches, meaning they didn't squeeze to get they were too friendly with their players. They didn't get the best out of everybody. You kind of want to go with that field general where you like your coach, but you want to make sure that you got a little bit of fear there. And that's why I do think that at this stage, If you're not scared of your debt, that's why we always talk about treat it like it's a chainsaw. If you're using debt and you're not scared, you're probably using it wrong. And that falls on the credit cards. Because I think in your 20s, that is the big risk, is because you look at this as a bridge. I'll just take the credit card debt. It will bridge me until I make more money, and then I'll pay myself back. The problem is, no, it's a siren song. You'll get trapped. You'll get behind, and you'll look back in that one bad mistake. If you can't pay it off monthly, don't even use it.
And this last one, I think in today's society, in today's culture, this is one that's interesting. Spend what is left after saving. You said this, Brian. Automate your savings. Learn how to do that early, and then live on the cheap. Yeah. I think the 20s is probably the only time in your life where it's okay to live incredibly cheaply, to really pinch pennies, to really, I don't mind. This is not the greatest like health thing, but youth will cover a lot of this. When I was in my 20s, like I don't know that I had the best diet. I was going to like Publix and I was buying the 2-for-1 cereals and I was eating that for a lot of meals. I'm not recommending that as like your nutrition plan. But man, it was pretty awesome having those extra dollars to be able to put into my Roth IRA.
I'd like to say we're not recommending Captain Crunch every meal. That is definitely not a recipe
I eat
for
Honey Nut
long-term
Cheerios.
success.
That's the healthy one.
But I do want you to bedazzle the basics. There's no reason that you can't still enjoy your life, but do it in a very cost-effective way. And the reason we're so focused on the discipline, the deferred gratification, is because there's exponential echoes, meaning that whatever you do in your 20s will just have tremendous exponential growth opportunities in the long term. So it is, if your car payment is $250 a month versus $700 a month, and you get to take that difference and actually throw it into investments, I'm telling you, your 50-year-old self will give you the sloppiest hug you've ever seen, because they'll be so happy that they'll leave tear stains on you as you back away from the hug. But it is one of those things. Focus on that great, big, beautiful tomorrow. It doesn't happen without taking small little steps while you're in your 20s. And Bo, this leads to, I want to talk about risk management, because we're talking about how to get the cash flow right, but we do have to make sure that a little thing that should be a setback doesn't throw you into desperation and chaos.
That's exactly right. If you've been listening to the show for any amount of time, you know that we love the financial order of operations. It's a 9-step tried and true process to get you through the financial decisions you have to make. Well, step number 1 in the FOO is to have your deductibles covered. That means your health insurance deductible, your auto deductible, your home deductible, so that if something happens, if that unknown Tuesday event takes place, you at least have money to keep yourself out of the ditch. And you may say, oh, well, that doesn't seem like a big hurdle. That doesn't seem like a huge threshold to get over. We know that right now, 56% of Americans have less than $1,000 in savings. I mean, if some came along, they couldn't come up with $1,000 without going into debt. So this shows us that if all you have done is covered your deductibles, you are likely doing better than 56% of the other folks in this country right now.
Historically, this number is close to 60%. We look at this number every year, and I think the only reason it's at 56% is probably post-pandemic. There was money that had been paid out and so forth. I wouldn't be shocked to see this number go right back to 60. Don't be that. I mean, that's a step 1 of financial abundance when we go through our levels of wealth, is just having enough money to where you can cover the deductibles covered. So you guys, and by the way, I feel like it's cruel if we talk about the FOO and we don't say moneyguy.com/resources. If you too want to download what the 9 steps are. If you want to go to learn.moneyguy.com, we have a deeper dive course that you can go check out. Bo, another thing, when you're in your 20s, you're healthy.
Yep.
So a lot of people, I think you feel bulletproof. Health insurance is expensive. It's boring. A lot of 20-year-olds don't even feel like they need it. But we want people to have health insurance.
I get so sad when I see someone say, hey, I'm about to hit 26. I've been on mom and dad's health insurance, but I'm about to age out of that. That extra $200 a month, $300, whatever it is, I'm just going to avoid. I don't go to the doctor. I don't need it. The problem is the reason that we have insurance is to cover those things that we don't know, those uh-ohs that we're not prepared for. You don't want to be in the situation when you're 27, 28, 29 years old where you get in that car accident or you have that accident at the gym or whatever the thing is that puts you in the hospital and you are literally flying naked because you have no coverage don't do that. Make sure you have the right types of insurance in place.
Well, we also know a lot of bankruptcies are caused by medical type things that happen. And you don't want to have an oopsie or a bad thing, just like you described, really side rail you to where even if you file bankruptcy, it's going to take close to a decade,
That's right.
7 to 10 years to get back to ground zero, where you even have the ability to do normal things like mortgages and so forth. It's just not worth the risk. Have health insurance. We also listed have property insurance. What we're talking about here, a lot of you probably do rent.
Yep.
I mean, and look, even though you're not in charge of the grounds, you are in charge of everything that's inside the walls. So renter's insurance should not even be overlooked if you're in your 20s. It's too cheap to protect yourself from the big oopsies that totally derail and side rail your financial life.
And then the other thing in your 20s you want to be thinking about is you want to be building your emergency reserves. Again, you might not fully have step number 4 of the FOO maxed out. You might not have that full 3 to 6, but you ought to be working towards that. Once you got the deductibles covered, then you want to make sure that you have somewhere between 3 to 6 months of your living expenses in cash on the sidelines. Again, in case something happens, job loss, medical emergency, whatever, you can cover those unknown circumstances that might happen.
So we've kind of covered cash flow. We've covered risk management. Let's talk about how the sexy stuff that actually creates wealth, and that's investing, putting that army of dollar bills to work. Here's the first thing I need 20-somethings to know. You recognize you're a billionaire of time.
Yep.
I mean, that is the biggest part. When I talk about the 3 components of wealth creation, we have discipline. That's your focus. That's that deferred gratification. That creates margin that allows you to invest money. You know, cash flow is always needed. And then that third component is the most important component, which is time. And since when you're in your 20s, you are a billionaire of seconds and minutes. It is crazy for you not to maximize the exponential growth opportunity.
And this is just how powerful that time can be. You've heard us say it all the time. On every show that we have, Brian keeps a koozie right there that says this $1 can turn into $88. There's this concept that for someone who's 20 and they put $1 to work,
21 for the beer drinkers.
If you're a beer drinker, you got to be 21 and retire at 66. But if you're just a 20-year-old working, $1 can turn into $88 by the time that you get to age 65. At the early parts of your career, your dollars are more powerful than they will be at any other time in your working life. So the sooner you can figure this out and the earlier you can start saving, the better off you will be. If you want to know what your multiplier is based on your age, go to moneyguy.com/resource. So we have this wealth multiplier. You can see it on the screen, and it shows that at 20, it's 88. But by the time you get to 25, it drops down to 44. Still super powerful, but the earlier you figure it out, the better off you will be for the long term.
Yeah, and a lot of people, if you're brand new, because look, y'all wonder, we cover these concepts. 50% of you are brand new to the Money Guy channel. And I want to tell you, you're saying, how? Tell me, how do I do this? What's going to get me this type of multiplier? In the beginning, there's nothing wrong with index target retirement funds where you basically have to answer 2 questions. How much can I save? When do I need it? They will do all the heavy lifting of the asset allocation, dealing, being very aggressive while you're young, getting more conservative as you're older. Now, look, you will outgrow this at some point, but it's that great, big, beautiful tomorrow moment where you're super successful. You need a financial planner. But in the beginning, an index target retirement fund that doesn't have commissions, and the 3 biggest providers are like the Vanguards, the Fidelity Investments, the Charles Schwabs. They're going to be able to hook you up. Focus on how much you can save more than where the money goes, because savings rate is so much more important than the mix of things when you're starting out.
All right, so now as we're working up in the pyramid, we get to more complex items. And one of the items that gets a little more complex is tax planning. It's so funny with where I sit right now. I look back to my 20-year-old self and I'm kind of envious of what tax planning was like for me back then. I used to think, and you said this too, Brian, man, I can't wait till it's complicated. I can't wait till I have K1s and Schedule Cs and Schedule Es and all these different things. In your 20s, don't try to make your taxes any more complicated than they have to be. I miss the time, Brian, when I could take on like April the 14th, I could spend about 20 minutes going through my tax return and just get it done very, very quickly. That will change. So don't try to complicate your tax life, it's okay early on if it's fairly simple.
Yeah, I mean, I think for most people, this is when you're in your 20s, more than likely you're doing your taxes in the Februaries because you're just taking your W-2.
Oh, yeah, you want to get that refund
You want to get that
That's
refund
right. Yeah,
money, coming in. So yeah, don't go chasing complex. It will find you with further success. It will come. You can use tools like TurboTax. Yep. We even threw out the referral because I know what you volunteered with at UGA. And this is everywhere. VITA is a not-for-profit organization that helps people in the community prepare their taxes. Matter of fact, we even have some clients that volunteer.
Yeah,
that is
as their retirement gig.
As they retire, they retire into, this is one of their community involvement things. I think that's outstanding because we all know financial mutants get this stuff.
Yeah, if you're curious, and it's a free service. It's volunteer income tax assistance. You can go look up VITA. It's a really, really great program. Not a bad thing to think about if you have a very simple tax situation. All right. Well, then we have estate planning. Now, I don't know about you, Brian. In my 20s, estate planning was not something that was like top of mind. I wasn't thinking about my mortality there. And I wasn't thinking that really there was a lot of work for me to do there. So one of the things we said that just sort of a basic thing is make sure beneficiaries are updated on your account. So if you have a Roth IRA, make sure you have a beneficiary added to that. If you have your 401k that you are contributing to, make sure that you have beneficiaries listed on that account so that in the unbelievable event that something did happen to you, your assets would pass to the people that you want your assets to pass to.
Estate planning, if you have, because there are things that complicate life. Obviously, if you have children and other things, make sure your estate planning. You still would probably want a will or something.
Sure.
We had a whole discussion: is this a napkin estate plan? Is this boilerplate? I think in the beginning, the biggest thing is make sure those big risk, like, hey, who's going to take care of the kids, and and how my assets are going to pass. Just make sure you are giving a little thought to that. It's probably not going to be super complex in your 20s, but it still deserves your attention so that no mistakes are made, just in case.
All right, Brian. So we talked about the 20s. The 20s is this decade where we are building the base. We're doing our foundational knowledge. Well, then we get into our 30s, and we, no matter how many times we try to change the name of this, we don't change it.
30s, I don't know why you try to change the name of this.
I like coming up with creative things, but it's just so true. It is, in fact, and I'm living this so very truly, 30s is the messy middle. It's when things change a little bit. This is like
you throw the arrow, you throw the dart, and it hits the bullseye, and now you're upset that it's on the left side of the bullseye versus, when we call it the messy middle, I think that this is actually comforting because I think it is hopefully every one of you who are in your 30s and you're like, man, I made it through my 20s. I'm in my 30s. I thought this would be feeling easier right now, but it's just not because you're super busy at work. If you got a significant other, you're trying to figure out the whole family thing and then add on there this whole craziness with the real estate market and that first home purchase. It is perfectly okay that this is called the messy middle because I think that should hopefully give you some comfort that you're in the right season of life.
All right, so let's talk about the financial planning pyramids or the basics. In your 30s, now it's likely that your cash flow has changed. You're likely making more money, whether it be through wages, income, side hustles, bonuses, than you did in your 20s. So one of the things you want to make sure you do is that your savings rate follows suit. I see this all the time with my friends, Brian. I'm like, hey, start saving in your 20s, $500 a month, and max out that Roth IRA. And they start doing it. Well, they get some promotions and their job circumstances change. And in their 30s, I'm like, hey, man, how you doing? Like, oh, Roth is doing great, still doing $500 a month. And I'm like, no, dude, you got to as your income goes up, so too does the amount that you are saving. That's why we talk about that 25% savings rate that you ought to be shooting for. If your income increases, so too should the dollars that are going into your army of dollar bills.
Yeah, it's a big part. I have a lot of grace for my 20-somethings because I know you come from, pretty much zero and you're building this thing up. So to say 25% of your gross income is hard in your 20s, in your 30s, you got to be reaching completion on reaching that goal. And a big part of this, lifestyle creep. Yep. And this is the thing. Look, you make a mistake we hear about the latte factor and all these things where people are buying coffee. That's not really what we're seeing the problems. The problems we see for 30-somethings is, how big is that car and that car payment? How big is your mortgage and that mortgage payment? Because instead of $100 a month mistakes here, we see thousands of dollars a month of mistakes that just are being spent on the cost of just staying alive and looking good versus building that great big beautiful tomorrow in the future.
Yeah, there's some really interesting statistics that Daniel pulled for this on us. We know that right now the average age of a first-time home buyer is 34 years old. That's kind of remarkable because in our experience, both of us bought our first home before age 34. What I think is really even more remarkable, I think it's probably one of the reasons that this age has increased over time, is that the median home price in this country right now is $408,000. That is an increase of over 24% since pre-pandemic, since the beginning of 2020.
That's disgusting.
It is remarkable how much more expensive houses have become. And because of that, it's pushing that large decision that a lot of us will make in our lives out into the decade of the 30s, right there in the square, in the middle of the messy middle.
Yeah, I'm biting my tongue because this is one of those things between the student loan crisis as well as now the home prices for first-time home buyers. We've got a problem. That's why, I'll bite my tongue because we're not a political show, but we need more younger people in government or involved with it. I think the time for the 80-year-olds that are running all policies, we ought to really rethink it, because I don't think that's a because it's both sides.
Yep,
but it is
definitely.
We have an issue here that we need to make sure. But hang out there. We're going to get through this, and I still am very optimistic in the long term that there will be opportunities that come.
And so I think a lot of people out there are saying, hey, well, I can't control this housing thing. This is something that's happening against my will. I can't fight it. That very well may be true right now. However, there's another consumption decision that we see a lot of people making, and this one very much is inside of most of our controls, and that's how we purchase automobiles. Right now that we know when it comes to buying a car, the average auto loan term for a car is 72 months. I know most people don't even keep their cars for that long, but they're having loans for 72 months. And 1 in 3 folks right now who trade in their vehicle, they're actually underwater on their loan. So they are trading in negative equity. You will never build wealth that way. You will never reach financial independence if you just keep rolling it in. So I think in your 30s, when you actually have the money to be able to qualify for these loans and you can get into luxury cars, you have to really check yourself and say, man, am I doing the things I'm supposed to be doing? And am I doing them in the right order? Or am I getting things out of whack?
I mean, remember, I said moneyguy.com/resources. We have the free deliverable of the 9 steps of the financial order of operations. Guys, the fancy cars, that stuff doesn't happen until you're on steps 8 and 9. Yep. I mean, there is nothing wrong if you realize 23-8 is what we talk about all the time, meaning that you're putting down at least 20%, and realize this formula is grace-filled so that you have a reliable car that will get you to work, because working and building wealth by automated investing is what's going to happen. So 20% down, 3 years, no more than 3 years on the financing, and no more than 8% of your gross income. And we're talking about non-luxury brands. If you want to get into luxury type stuff, it's got to be same as cash. I want you essentially paying it off in the next few months after you buy it. And also, do not fall in the trap that your car payment is higher than what your monthly investment is, because you are way backwards if you're doing what Bo said. You're doing $500 a month to load up that Roth IRA, and then you have a $750 car payment. No. That's not the order we want things. We want a $250 to $400 car payment, and we want $1,200 a month going in that investment. Let's get this thing, let's blow it out so that you do get that great, big, beautiful tomorrow.
Because remember, even in your 30s, your dollars are so powerful, so don't miss out on that. Don't squander that. Here's another thing, Brian, that I think we see all the time. In your 30s, you should probably start answering this question, and you should know the answer to this question. Is what I'm doing right now a job, or am I actually in my career? Is the thing that I'm doing now something that's building for when I get into my late 30s, 40s, 50s, or is this just a clock in, clock out, and I'll find something next year? the answer to that question matters and can have a big impact on your overall financial life.
Yeah, there's some data to this. We love throwing some data, and I questioned Daniel on this because he found 19% of Americans are unhappy with their job, and I was like, well, wait a minute, I need more information than just telling me 19%, because when I see that data, I'm like 81% are happy. That seems really high, and it is sad. This pandemic, I'm curious to see what happens post-pandemic with this research, because a lot of our data closed out in 2019, pre-pandemic, but we were on a positive trajectory with career satisfaction because in America, we had gone from 41% to 55% of Americans were saying they were satisfied with their job and somewhat on the happy spectrum. That's a positive thing. I'm curious to see what happened through the pandemic, but I'm an optimist that hopefully things get back to a positive trajectory on that.
Would you agree with this statement, Brian? The 30s might be the last stop where making a transition, making a shift is easy, right? Like as you get into your 40s and as life changes and you have kids and you have older kids, you have more commitments. If you're stuck in a job that you just can't stand and you're biting your fingernails on Sunday, it gets a lot harder to do that the longer you wait. So in your 30s, it really might be valuable to do a self-assessment saying, am I doing what I want to be doing long-term? Now, that doesn't mean that you like love every absolute thing about your job and you're skipping to work every day, but it is a realistic assessment of, okay, this is something I want to commit to for the next 10, 15, 20 years.
Well, definitely focus on this in your 30s because just naturally the system starts, even though I know it's illegal. I mean, being the child of a father that was displaced in his mid 40s, it's tough. It is really tough when the system closes out on you and says, hey, we're going to, downsize, or we're getting out of this industry. You go find something else to do. You need to get yourself in that career in your 30s so that you don't get that wake-up call in your 40s that could really put you in some shaky financial ground. Right. And like I said, I think it turned me into who I am, but it was definitely a struggle growing up in a household where essentially the carpet was ripped out from underneath us.
All right, let's talk about risk management in our 30s. Likely at this age and stage, you're starting to have other human beings that depend on you. Perhaps that's a spouse, perhaps that's kids, perhaps that's aging parents. You start to feel some pressure that, man, if something happens to me, there are other folks that will be affected by this. If I get hit by that bus and it takes me out, that's going to be a problem for my family. If I get disabled and I can't go to work anymore, that's going to be a problem. So you need to make sure that if there are folks depending on you, if your livelihood affects the livelihood of others, you need to make sure that you insure against those types of risks. The two easiest ways to do that are life insurance. We love low-cost term life insurance, and disability insurance, which we often see underinsured, which is actually a much higher probability thing of happening than premature death.
Remember, we said term life insurance. So if you got like kids that, or here, you're looking at typically the term when you think you can self-insure afterwards. So that might be 20 years for the kids, or 25 years, even 30 years. But we're talking about term life insurance, not the permanent expensive whole life. That's a different purpose on that type of stuff. This is exactly what Bo said. We want to make sure that if you're in debt or you still haven't fully funded all your retirement savings so that your spouse or significant other would be in a tough situation or the kids are going to be in a tough situation, it's too cheap, too affordable to afford to just insure that. Just make sure you do that step, because you might be shocked. It's a few $100 a year to really make this risk go away.
All right, and so we talked about in your 20s that you should be building towards step 4 of the financial order of operation. You should be building your emergency fund. In your 30s, that becomes a non-negotiable. You need to have, depending on what the right number for you is, 3 months or 6 months, your fully funded emergency fund. Again, because people are now depending on you. If something goes wrong, it affects other people. So it becomes a non-negotiable at this stage of your financial life.
Yeah, when we do the financial order of operations, remember moneyguy.com/resources. You too can download it. Step 1, deductibles covered. That's just so you don't let just something out of the blue side rail your entire financial life. When you get to step 4 of the financial order of operations, which is the true emergency reserves, Guys, we're counting on in your 30s that you kind of are trying to build yourself that stable foundation for your family. This is the point to make sure, exactly what Bo said, 3 to 6 months, depending upon how many working people are in the household, also how easy it is for you to get a new job. Pay attention to those factors.
And then here's the last one. This is just often overlooked. Umbrella insurance.
Yeah.
It is a very low-cost insurance that sits over the rest of your financial life that will protect you. If you have assets, or if you have income, or if you have income potential, umbrella insurance is something that makes so much sense in so many circumstances. And yet time after time, we see folks who don't have it. If you're curious, just call your property and casualty insurance agent. Tell them you want about your net worth of umbrella insurance, rounded to the nearest million most often. So 1 million, 2 million, 3 million, whatever the number is, and see how much it is. You'll be amazed. It is very low cost, affordable insurance that you should likely have in place.
Let's talk about investing. Okay. This is the stuff that rubber meets the road on actually building the wealth. We want you at 25% of your gross income. You're asking yourself, probably in your 30s, since you are having kids, you're like, when do we actually start saving for college for the kiddos? I think this is a step 8 moment, meaning that this is going to come after hyperaccumulation. Right. So after you've reached 25% of your gross income, going to that great big beautiful tomorrow, that's when you can start thinking about the kids. And
then another thing that likely happens in your 30s, depending on kind of where you are in your financial life cycle, is you might actually graduate past target retirement index funds. You know that we say all the time, for those in your 20s or those starting out, we love the automated nature of target retirement index funds. But when your portfolio does hit that critical mass, $400,000, $500,000, $600,000, it's likely that you could benefit from a more specialized asset allocation, how you spread out your assets, and an asset location, where you put your assets. So in your 30s, if you do start to approach those critical masses, it's a time to start having those conversations and thinking through, okay, do I need to move from general investment advice to very specialized, for my circumstance, investment advice?
And don't forget the savings rate. I mean, I've said it, 25%, but savings rate and using index target retirement funds while you're building up to that critical mass that Bo just talked about is still going to be the most important behavior and factor that will lead to an indicator of how successful you'll be.
All right, Brian, so let's talk about tax planning. Oftentimes when we start out, we're young, we hear Roth, 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 Roth. And that's true because tax-free growth is awesome. However, there are times when pre-tax makes sense. It makes sense to go to the traditional side of your 401k if you're in a higher income level. In your 30s, this often happens. Don't forget to assess this every year, maybe at open enrollment or whenever. Think through, should I still be doing those Roth contributions, or might I benefit from going to pre-tax contributions for the current year tax savings?
I also think this is a point where, because look, you're messy middle, you are having some career success, you got the kids in the house, you're trying, you're reaching probably that critical mass point over $500,000, $600,000 of investable assets. Nothing wrong with trying to bring in outside help with, a financial advisor, somebody to help you protect yourself from those blind spots or maximize your potential. Don't be scared to do that. I think that's a great planning opportunity.
All right. Now, on the estate planning front, if you have children, you need a will. I'm going to say that again because it's that important. If you have children, you need a will. One of the things we always ask prospects is, hey, if something were to happen to you guys, who would take care of the kids? And normally the spouses kind of do this number. If you're listening on iTunes, you can't see me, but they kind of look at each other and they're like, well, my brother, no, your sister, no. Well, if it's difficult for you to make the decision about what happens to your kids while you're here, imagine how much more difficult that will be if you are not here. That's why the estate documents make so much sense. You just have to have them in place. Don't put it on the back burner. Get it done so that you can speak for yourself if you're not here to speak for yourself.
And before you meet with that attorney, go ahead, because I do think this is graduating beyond the boilerplate and graduating beyond even the back of the napkin, as you call it, Bo. You need to know, who do you want to be the executor of your estate? Go ahead and have these conversations, the guardianship for your children, and then any trustees that you're going to have from those testamentary trusts that will be built into your estate document. Go ahead and have those conversations. Go ahead and know who you want to talk about with the attorney so that you can go ahead and do your homework, because every bit of research is going to save you money in preparation of those expenses.
And then as family circumstances change, don't forget to update beneficiaries. Again, if you have New child born, you want to update that. If someone in your life passes away, you want to update that. Make sure at least every couple of years you're checking the beneficiaries across all of your accounts, not just your IRAs, housing your custodian, but also your 401ks, your life insurance, so on and so forth, to make sure that what you want to happen is indeed what's set up to happen when you pass away.
I want to transition into our 40s, Bo.
Okay.
We called this top of the mountain.
Top of the mountain. That's so positive.
Yeah,
that's so positive.
I think you guys got a hold of this because I talked about that it could be, top of the mountain is assuming you've done it right, positive. Mm-hmm. It could be bitter train opportunity moment too, because we do hear there's a lot of midlife crisis that occur in the 40s, and I want to talk to that. Is that I think that if you're on the positive side, I know for myself. If you've done it right, you're more sentimental in your 40s because you've lived long enough now. You can kind of look back with that fondness of some of the things you did, the journeys you've had, the experiences, and it brings makes you feel warm and fuzzy.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
It makes the hair on your arm stand up. But if you've done it wrong, instead of it being kind of a sentimental thing, it could be kind of a bitter moment where you're like, oh man, I missed out on some really key opportunities. Maybe I should have started saving earlier. Maybe I should have created more memories and enjoyed my 30s a little bit more. Those type of things build up. I want to make sure, because this is the moment. Your 40s, you're still young. I mean, look, as much as Bo picks on me, 40-year-olds, people in their 40s, that decade, you are still very active. Mm-hmm. You can still do a lot of things, but it is one of those things, if you're not on the track of planning or really putting thought towards this, instead of having 10,000 ways to succeed, your path gets tightened up. You better really be doing that measure twice, cut once moment to make sure you are on the path of abundance and creating success.
Did you just come up with that? I love that. Like when you're in your 20s, you have 10,000 paths to success. When you get to your 40s, it's probably not 10,000 anymore.
Yeah. So you've got it, because that's what I love. There's so much grace and opportunity and flexibility for money, but it does tighten up. So you got to get more and more serious, because it starts narrowing down, and you better be on the right side of it.
All right. So let's check out our financial planning pyramid. So first, if we start at the baseline, cash flow, you said something so interesting, Brian. Your 40s was the first decade that you did not feel broke.
Yeah. I even put a number on it. I think it was between 41 and 42 years of age. I actually felt like I had money.
Sure.
And I think I tell people that that's not a brag, because I'm hoping that it's actually a liberator, because I want everybody who's doing things right. If you're in your 20s, if you're in your 30s, even late 30s to early 40s, you might be like, when do I actually get to enjoy and feel like this is not, working against me or I'm swimming upstream? I do think this is about the period it happens, because you're having some success in your career. You've been doing automated investing, all the good habits. You're getting the fruits of this. You've now also had 20 plus years of compounding growth. It's no mistake or just tripping over it that most millionaires actually reach it around the 47 to 49 years of age, because they've had over 25 years of compounding growth working for them at that point.
Love it. So one of the things that you can do in your 40s to help yourself is to know your why. And you may be thinking, why are y'all putting this in cash flow? That doesn't seem like a cash flow thing. It very much is. In your 40s, you start recognizing, man, my kids are getting older. I want to be creating memories. I want to be doing these types of things with them. Maybe I don't want to be working 90 hours a week anymore. Maybe I'm not trying to get that next promotion. Maybe I'm not hard charging to try to do whatever the fill in the blank is. I know that this is the level of success I want to achieve, and I'm going to be comfortable living in that place and enjoying the here and now. Or I know that I need to work a little bit harder to get to whatever X is, whatever Y is. Stop moving the goalpost. So often we see people say, man, if I could just get to this income, then you get not just this one, and then this one, and then this one, and this one.
I talk about quit moving the goalposts, because it is one of those things. I mean, if you've got the kids are getting a little bit older, I'm always amazed at people. They get in their 40s, they start having financial success, big incomes, and then they go buy the 5,500, 6,000 square foot house when the kids are going to college in 2 years,
Yep.
and it's one of those things where you quit moving the goalposts. Just because you can doesn't mean you should. I'd rather you focus on how you're going to spend your time. What are your hobbies? What makes you happy? Those are the things that you really need to be spending time on, not how you can make yourself look cooler and expand the lifestyle, because I feel like that is something that happens. Quit changing the rules on yourself, because if you keep pushing things bigger and bigger and bigger, you're chasing happiness. That's not what's going to create the happiness.
Yep.
The happiness is going to come from the activities, the memories, the experiences. So you need to put some effort into what is the happiness factor, because it's not the stuff.
Another thing that I see that is kind of exciting from a cash flow perspective in your 40s is you can start getting a little advanced in how you approach your cash flow. Maybe you're someone who's charitably minded and you've always given money to a specific charity or given money to your church. And you recognize in your 40, maybe there's a better way for me to do this. Maybe I could do something like use a charitable gift fund, and I can donate appreciated securities. And with what I was giving, I can replenish my taxable account. It's just a more efficient way to approach how you've already been doing the things you've been doing for the last 5, 10, 15, 20 years. Just at this stage, you can probably take it up a notch. You can probably optimize. You can level up, plus up, do it slightly better, slightly more efficiently.
Risk management wise, I have two things here, and one's kind of counter. I want you to make sure you're exercising. Because this is one of those things where I do think that if you're not using it, you do start to lose it. If you get injured, it takes longer to heal. So make sure you're focusing on exercising, what you eat, because this is that stage. I think we get away with a lot in our 20s and 30s. The 40s, you need to be much more deliberate about it. And this is also going to lead to you to thinking about, where are we at from a risk standpoint of my life insurance? Because the great news about your 40s is that to actuaries and the people measuring risk, you're still very healthy.
Yeah.
You're young. So you can go buy that new you can reset that term life insurance for the kids or whatever else. I had a client meeting yesterday, and it was so cool because we had reshopped their insurance right as they were that 39 to 40 years of age. And now their kids are getting close to graduating from high school, going to college, because we're a few years in the future. And we know we have plenty of life insurance because while rates were low, we reset that term policy. Pay attention to that stuff, because it is still one of those low cost moments where you can reassess your what you need from life insurance, disability, and those type of things of protection.
I love how you just use the word reassess, because that same exact thing happens when it comes to investing. 40s might be the type where you need to hyper save if you're behind, because in your 40s, you need to know your number. When you're in your 20s and 30s, it's okay to shoot for a savings rate. I want to be saving 20, 25%. I want to be saving. In your 40s, you ought to be able to start refining that goal. What is my number? What am I trying to get to? And am I on track to get that? Am I ahead? Am I behind? And if I am behind, what do I need to do to start catching up? You should be able to start answering that question when you get into your 40s decade.
This is also, you get to do some fun stuff with your portfolios too, because this is where asset location, you probably are getting beyond the index target retirement funds, where you can focus on where exactly am I putting my money. You can also expand your asset allocation, because those target retirement funds, they're great in the fact that they make a lot of your decisions easy for you, but they are missing out on things like real estate and other asset classes that definitely probably have a place in your overall asset allocation. This is the time to really focus on that.
And then here's what you don't want to focus on in your 40s. Don't outsmart yourself. Don't think that just because what I did in my 20s and my 30s got me here, all of a sudden I have to figure out something more complicated or more complex. No, you can do the same things. It's just with bigger numbers, and you can do it slightly more efficiently, and you have more tools in your tool belt. But don't outsmart yourself. Don't think you have to start getting into private deals or taking on leverage or doing crazy things to continue doing what you've already been doing for the last 2 decades.
I think it shocks people when they find out still the majority of my assets, index funds. When I talk about investing assets, they're still in index funds. They're not in these private deals that lock me up for 12 years. It's just pay attention. There's nothing wrong with being an index investor. You just got to probably be a little more sophisticated with how you structure that in your portfolio.
All right. Now, when you get to tax planning, this is interesting, because when you're in your 40s, you've likely been doing your taxes for almost 20 years now. And you said, yeah, I've gone 20 years. I've never been audited. No one's ever come and talked to me. Does this whole tax thing really matter? Maybe I can start being a little more gray. Maybe I can be a little more aggressive. Maybe I can start thinking through buying things and writing them off and doing this. And I would caution you, and you say this best, Brian, don't mess with the IRS.
Yeah, I mean, I'm amazed when I watch, because you guys have me dabbling into Instagram and TikTok and other things like that. And some of the advice I see on just structure an LLC and then start running everything through it, and it's all deductible. I'm like, yeah, it's all deductible until you get caught. And then you're going to quickly realize, hey, the only group, if you don't pay your power bill, they just cut your lights off. If you don't pay your taxes, they come and they take your stuff. And more than likely, a few of the people that come to take your stuff might have a gun strapped to them, because this is the law. This is the government. They have abilities and features of enforcement that you and I can't do. Remember, Al Capone was a mobster, but he went to jail for tax evasion. So it's just something to pay attention to. Don't screw with the IRS, because I have seen my background in public accounting, working in tax preparation for close to 2 decades. I have physically witnessed grown men in their 40s crying because they went and represented themselves before the IRS. The IRS asked them all kind of things. There's just mistakes that you don't want to put yourself on that gray zone to where it derails your entire financial life.
So then another thing that you can do as it relates to tax planning is a little bit goes a long way. In your 40s, if you start thinking about tax planning from a different perspective and less about, okay, how much tax am I just saving this year, but how much tax can I save over my entire financial life, you'll be amazed at how impactful that could be. Likely in your 40s, you're getting into the hyper accumulation, step 7 of the financial order of operations. You can go check that out at learn.moneyguy.com if you want to know more about that. You are likely starting to think about these different tax buckets. Maybe I don't just need to focus on my asset allocation, how I spread my assets. I ought to also look at my asset location, what types of assets I'm holding in which types of bucket, because all of those buckets are treated differently from a tax perspective. Tax deferred assets grow without paying any income tax now. You pay it when you pull the money out. So in those types of accounts, you want to hold investments to generate ordinary income. These are your bonds, your fixed income, your more conservative investments. Tax-free Roth HSA assets are likely going to grow tax-free if you use them for qualified expenses in the future. That's where you want to hold your high-flying growth assets, the things that you think have the highest capital appreciation potential. You want to put those in your HSAs and in your Roth accounts so that they grow. And then after tax, this is your third bucket. This is that hyperaccumulation bucket. These are assets with more favorable tax treatment. They have capital gain opportunities, or perhaps they have qualified dividend distributions. If you can think about structuring your portfolio to hold different types of assets in different types of buckets over the life of your portfolio, you'll be amazed at what a tax difference it can make.
This is also, Bo, because I love talking about the 3 buckets and making sure you're maximizing the tax location. It is also, you need to pay attention to what marginal tax rate you're in and so forth, because this is where you still are having that discussion of figuring out, am I pre-tax traditional where I am taking that tax deduction out, or am I going to focus on that tax-free Roth that's in my employer plan? And it really has a lot to do with where your tax rates are and what your long-term goals are. Pay attention to that stuff.
All right. Now, from an estate planning standpoint, in your 40s, there's a chance that your children are getting older. We see this all the time, that someone had their first baby or first couple of babies and they went and got the estate plan done. And it says, if something happens to us, this person wants to, is going to take care of the kids. That's great. When your kids start getting to like 14, 15, 16, and your financial empire is built up, now you have to start thinking about, man, if something happened to us, would my child at age 18 or age 21 or whatever be okay inheriting hundreds of thousands or maybe millions of dollars? So there's a chance your estate plan needs to be updated based on the changing circumstances of your financial life. Don't just assume the one that you put in place 10 years ago is still the one that makes the most sense today.
Yeah, that's great, Bo. Let's transition into 50-year-olds.
All right.
Because I resemble too much of the 40s, but I'm getting really close to celebrate, to getting to this point. And it is, we titled this Celebration or Panic, because it is one of those things where I want you to kind of vision plan and think about what you expect your retirement to be. And this is not daydreaming anymore. But you better be fine tuning the plan. Right. I mean, this is beyond the daydreaming, because we're going to be talking about, hey, are you taking on too much risk, to get the growth? Maybe you do need to be having that decision to know, what does the asset allocation look like? It is also, this is the decade I want you to start feeling like you can and should be debt free. I want mortgages paid off. I don't want any credit card debt, because truthfully, you should not have that even in your 20s and 30s. But there shouldn't be student loans. There shouldn't be mortgage debt. You should have debt freedom. And also, I don't want you waiting until your 60s to build memories. I mean, I'm always amazed at how many people have this. It's like they're putting on the fridge a picture of themselves when they're 65. Don't wait until then. You need to be building memories through all decades of your life. Make sure you're using that moment to celebrate your successes.
And look, this is likely going to be that time where perhaps you want to make sure that you have surgically planned for what retirement's going to look like. This is a great time to think about hiring a professional, taking the relation to the next level, getting someone to come alongside you to help refine that plan, because some of the stuff gets a little nuanced as you get into your 50s. So from a cash flow perspective, this is one thing that we see so often, is that your kids are likely adults or almost adults. Have you begun thinking through, are my little chickadees ready to actually fly out of the nest? Am I going to be able to get my kids off of economic outpatient care, or are they still going to be a budgetary item for me even well into adulthood?
Yeah, I mean, we see this trend. I mean, this was one of the things listed in The Millionaire Next Door as an indicator of success, of becoming a millionaire. You do want your children. That's why I would focus on, hey, we talked to a lot of college kids when we were in Athens a few weeks back. Help guide your children into good majors so they don't have tons of student loan debt. And if they do, they can pay it off because they have good careers coming their way. Try to get your children to be independent. It is so important. And I do want to focus on, because we want you to be debt free. Get out of all debts at this point. Fully own your life. It is hard to say you're financially independent when you have a ton of encumbrances hanging out there with debt. You want to be completely debt free.
From a risk management standpoint, there's a chance that in your 50s, this is likely where you want to start looking at long-term care. When you think about your genealogy, is it likely that there will be some sort of end-of-life care for you? If that's the case, then long-term care is probably a good time to, in your 50s is probably a good time to start looking at that, because it's not going to be so cost prohibitive in terms of waiting too late, but you're also not going to pay for it for 30 years likely before you need it. So if you're someone in that donut hole, 50s is probably where you want to start thinking through that.
Life insurance, I think this is one of those things where you might be, definitely worth measuring. You might be getting close to self-insurance because, I mean, if you got the kids out of the house, they're out of college, they're in their own careers, you've got enough pot of money saved up to where you're fully financially independent, you can start looking at some of those term life insurance policies to see if you're truly on self-insured. By the way, even if you are, don't just throw away those term policies, because a lot of them realize you paid premiums for years where you're probably getting the cost of that insurance is much higher than what the actual annual premium is. Look at that. You might not want to just throw them away. You might want to go ahead and let them finish out their term before you just don't re-up and get more life insurance. But it is definitely something where you should measure twice, cut once on determining how are you from a risk management standpoint.
When it comes to investing in your 50s, your retirement runway should really be starting to take shape. And not so much that, remember, in your 20s and 30s, you were focused on your savings rate. In your 40s, you needed to know your number. In your 50s is where you want to start stress testing. Will this plan actually work? We've shown this to you before. But one of the ways we like to do this is through a Monte Carlo analysis, where we have a number of different variables saying, what do we think our probability of success is if we retire this year, if we wait to take our pension until this year, if we start drawing some Social Security here? You want to make sure that you have stress tested your plan early enough that you give yourself some time to make adjustments as needed if you need to make adjustments. So in your 50s, this is where you really want to start thinking through, do I have the right portfolio and plan in place to provide for that great, big, beautiful tomorrow that I've been looking for and waiting for?
I think this is a take that I think a lot of people would be like, why is this under investing? I want you to not, because we talk about the financial stuff, but you also need to be figuring out and thinking about what does your life look like from an interest and hobbies post-work life. Because, we've done some interviews on what do happy retirees look like. They have a life outside of work.
It's not
and I think
just work.
that
That's
is,
right.
so you do need to make sure focus on planning what hobbies, what interests you will have post-retirement so that you can go ahead and start investing in that to make sure what that moment and what that happiness factor is for you.
When you're in your early 20s, 30s, and 40s, you really start thinking about your risk tolerance. How much risk can I handle? How much do I feel comfortable with? As you get into your 50s and on, then you have to start thinking about risk capacity. How much risk should I be taking? Do I have enough time to be able to recover before I need these dollars? So in your 50s, you need to take a long, hard look at both your diversification and your asset location. Where are my assets put? And when I retire, when I reach financial independence, where are my dollars going to come from? Because those decisions are likely going to have a long-term impact on the viability of your plan.
Bo, I want to talk about a little bit we talked about risk reward, making sure you're not taking too much risk, especially because if you've won the game. But I do think it's one of those things, tax planning wise. This is a lot of people, especially if you're part of that FIRE movement, because I think anybody who's retiring early, and that's 50 somethings, this is a primo opportunity to where required minimum distributions start at 72. Yep. Your earned income is gone completely away because you've retired. Roth conversions in your 50s is an incredible planning opportunity.
And then you want to know about some key dates because a lot of big things happen in your 50s. The first one, at age 50, you become eligible for catch-up contributions, both on the IRA as well as the 401k side. The government lets you save a little bit extra. At age 55, if you are retired, if you stop working and you were employed with your employer in the year that you turn 55, you can actually begin drawing from your 401k. It's a little bit earlier than the normal pre-tax deadline of 59 and a half. So if you are somebody who's thinking about retiring in your 54th year, you may just want to think through it because waiting that extra few months or extra year might give you that little bit extra, be able to access the dollars earlier than you might be able to otherwise.
Yeah, and then I think 59 and a half, obviously
is
important.
The IRA, that's right.
IRAs, it's one of those things. Yes, there's some complex annuitizing accounts where you can get to it even earlier, but these are the key dates, 50, 55, and 59 and a half to pay attention to when we are considering things from a tax planning. Estate planning wise, it's more likely you're going to have full wills that were drafted by an attorney. You will need to be also very aware of how do revocable trusts that work outside of, your wills, how do, because that's a revocable trust, a living trust. These things and your asset titling will become so important as you are in this level of success that you better be very deliberate in making sure your wishes and the most optimum structure is paid attention to so you don't get yourself in a big whoopsie situation.
One of the things we see, this happens so often, is when someone becomes a new client of the firm of Bound Wealth, they'll come in and we'll say, hey, let us review your estate documents. And we'll kind of go through a review and we'll say, okay, hey, we understand, this to be true and this to be true and this to be true and this to be true. But we noticed, this said you're supposed to have a revocable trust over here, but you got a joint account. And why is it supposed to be that way? And you have these trusts, but you have individuals as beneficiaries. You want to make sure that all the different pieces of your financial plan, of your financial life are talking to one another. You want to make that your estate plan is appropriately reflected inside of your investment plan. They need to work together to be a nice, cohesive, strategic, long-term plan.
Guys, hopefully you've seen there's lots of benefits to the financial planning pyramid and going through and thinking about this. It's a lot more complex if you're going to do it right than just spending less than you make, making sure you control debt.
That's right.
And, and last, just creating an automated plan. There's going to be different things you want to do by different decades. Make sure you're not neglecting your financial life. And that's why we have We've put lots of work. We've road tested this thing, seen lots of people create success. Financial order of operations. If you want the free downloads, moneyguy.com/resources. If you want to go ahead and get a deeper dive to accelerate your success, go to learn.moneyguy.com. Yep. We do have courses as well as tools like our net worth tool that will also help accelerate that path. Pay attention to these things and you can create success for yourself. We love creating content. I'm your host, Brian Preston, Mr. Bo Hansen, Money Guy team, out.